And start the local recording. And hello. Are there people in the chat, and can they hear us? Okay. Yes, they can. Let's mute that. All right. And we are ready to go. Hello!
Hello!
Welcome to Torn Book Club. I am your host, Josh, also known as Saruman, and with me is our guest, Genevieve Levin, better known as Eve. And she's with us as a guest reader and also just a fun geek to hang out with.
Well, we'll see.
Oh, you are. So I know we've been off the air for a couple weeks now, 3 weeks to be exact, and I do apologize for that. Real life got in the way. I've had a lot of work to do, but finally the crazy project that has been consuming my life for the last 3 months is now almost done, and I can get back to working on Star Trek. Yay!
Yay!
I've been working on I Love Lucy. And
which is pretty cool, but not as cool as Star Trek.
It's still pretty cool.
It's still pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so this month, March, we're going to be looking at sci-fi. And to make up for all the lost time that we had, rather than doing this show every 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing a show every week for the next couple of weeks, just to make up for all this lost time and to let you know that I'm still here and I still care.
Awesome.
And so we have a lot of stuff to go over this week. We've got our winner for our Rewrite Tolkien contest that will be read for us by Eve here. I thought it was important that since we have since this is Jane Austen, that we should have a female voice read it. And when I thought of that, I'm like, nobody better than Eve, really. Eve is a wonderful voice actress, and who's just finished her recording for the Katniss Chronicles.
Yep,
yes.
Just this week.
Yeah, I did mine.
You should all be listening. It's awesome.
It is an amazing show. I'm on it too. I just finished my stuff yesterday. I might go back for something else. We'll see.
I might too. So
yeah, there's all these like little bits here and there that
last minute things that need to be added in.
Yeah.
So. Anything to keep going because it's just fun. I didn't want to be done.
Yeah,
so.
it is a blast doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be getting to that in a little bit. And we also have our analysis and discussion of our February book of the month, which was The Fall of Arthur, which I believe I have right here. Yes, The Fall of Arthur, which I read part of. I read the main portion of it, but not so much the analysis that came after. So a lot of the analysis is me muddling my way through it. And we also have the announcement for our Rewrite Tolkien for March and our book of the month for March. And since this is sci-fi month, we got some cool sci-fi stuff we're going to be doing. Sci-fi, as much as I love Tolkien and fantasy and all that, sci-fi is kind of where I live. So this is going to be a fun month. So let's go right into our winner for Rewrite Tolkien, which was our Jane Austen entry. And our winner is this one, An Unexpected Party, which is, of course, Most Disagreeable, by Jill Richardson of Chicago, Illinois. And so we'll just go with that. So take it away, Eve.
And that's exciting for me because I'm originally from Chicago too, so go
Nice.
Chicago. So, An Unexpected Party, which is, of course, Most Disagreeable, by Jill Richardson, Chicago, Illinois. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a dwarf, formerly in possession of a good fortune, must be in want of its return. However little known this truth may be to the individuals involved in the particulars of his quest, it is so well fixed in the minds of dwarves and their subsequent generations that any necessary additions to their party are quite considered their rightful property. So Bilbo Baggins learned when a large party of such dwarves paid him an afternoon call, an entire party to whom, I must add, he had not yet been properly introduced. This lamentable fact had no effect on Sir Oakenshield, however, as he proceeded to deliver his haughty glance around the room, a room which did not quite meet his specifications. "It seems a trifle shabby that I must hang my own cloak," he sniffed to no one in particular, "and that—" Here he touched his elbow, which had been regrettably bruised on the threshold of Bilbo's establishment. "One must be injured in order to be welcomed into this estate." He waved off Bilbo's profuse, if somewhat unrequired, apologies. "Nevertheless, let us attend to our business. I feel sure that someone might offer us something stronger than tea before the evening is at its end." "What, if I may be so bold," began Mr. Baggins. In truth, Mr. Baggins and bold were not two words commonly associated. "What is the nature of this business? And why—" he began to stutter now at his recklessness in questioning so great a personage. "Why must it take place in my humble abode?" "Because, Mr. Baggins, the party requires your services." Sir Gandalf, who had hitherto remained quiet, spoke. Mr. Baggins felt sure from previous encounters that when Gandalf stood quietly, some mischief would follow. "The offer would be generous," he continued. "Indeed," Bomber addressed his host for the first time. "And you must realize, Mr. Baggins, that in spite of your manifold attractions—" At this his gaze lingered on the dining table, so recently laden with its lavish substance. "It is by no means certain that another such offer may ever be made to you." "I beg your pardon, my friend of generous girth." It was Bilbo's turn for the display of some little wit. "I cannot mistake your meaning. I may not have 10,000 a year, gentlemen, but I live comfortably enough." He turned up his own nose at Sir Oakenshield here, a feat made all the more difficult by the fact that he was, most charitably, a half-foot below that dwarf's stature. "I do not need to work for my keep like a grocer." "Ah, but have you a taste for adventure, sir?" Keeley betrayed his own taste for such uncomfortable pursuits by his shining eyes and eager looks. "And surely you would not object to taking in the sights at Lake Town, particularly such a sight as Smaug the magnificent dragon. Quite the prodigious tale you would have to tell, you understand." "Dragons? Adventure? I should prefer to be struck by lightning than endure anything so disagreeable. And who is this Smaug? I have certainly never heard of him. I am in no humour at present to give consequence to dragons who are slighted by history books." "My dear Mr. Baggins," queried Feely, "have you not heard of the dreadful row at the Lonely Mountain? But I suppose that news of real import rarely travels so far to the country. Ah, country living, it is so enchantingly innocent." Then something tookish arose in Bilbo. He was as aware as the next gentleman of the dismissive nature of young Master Feely's tone, and his noble lineage of Bull-Roarer Took could be denied no further. "I assure you, Mr. Killy, the country is quite as full of information as your Lonely Mountain, or whatever place you mean. Pardon me, I don't pretend to understand what you are talking about, but tell me what you wish to be done. I am at your service. Who is this Smaug you wish me to take notice of, and in what part of the country does he reside?" Sir Oakenshield, grand in stature and, if truth be known, rather plodding in speech, began the tale. "My grandfather possessed both title and fortune, you know, and as his rightful heir I stood to inherit. But through the wiles of a penniless fortune hunter, all was lost in the halls of Erebor. Smaug the dragon in question simply rose from nowhere to make his attempt at our fortune. He had no parents of consequence, no substance, a mercenary fellow, make no mistake." Balin punctuated his remarks with a stern shake of his head. "And it was a good deal too rude of him, too, I believe. But then, he was a younger son, you know, and his brother got all that there was to live upon when the old dragon passed away. Younger sons must make their way in the world in some fashion." As a younger son himself, Owain might be forgiven this remark, had he chosen to time it more prudently. That it was not prudent became clear by Sir Oakenshield's withering glare. "He is a cursed creature, and thus must be those who defend him. Let us formulate a plan and be quick about it. I desire to quit this establishment by morning and be on our journey." "But how shall we manage to regain what is rightfully ours?" Bofur's petulant speech demonstrated that he had no plan himself for this endeavour. "There is a secret door on the side of the mountain," began Gandalf. "Secret? Is that quite seemly? It does appear so not quite the thing to take such a backhanded approach." The Baggins portion of Bilbo's lineage began to reassert its adherence to strict propriety. "Shall we have some music?" Philly felt it best to distract the company. "I sing tolerably well, but I do not play, so perhaps my brother would consent to accompany me. How about the Misty Mountains tune?" So wore the evening, while good friends enjoyed good conversation, and those perhaps not so well pleased by the company sat in corners brooding, or stood together making disparaging remarks on the dress or style of Mr. Baggins' establishment. That Bilbo would go was determined. That he would obtain the dwarf's good graces, quite another. At length Bilbo stifled a yawn and rose. "In any case, good sirs, before I retire I shall require one matter to be resolved once and for all. In no way shall I leave my home without my pocket handkerchiefs. It is simply not proper. Good evening to you all."
That was awesome. That was
very Jane Austen.
That was incredibly Jane Austen. I actually hadn't had a chance to read the story, so I was listening to it like, this is amazing. And what I liked was, finally, we hear Bomber talk, because he doesn't speak in the movies at all. So we have a couple people in the chat now. We've got I Stole the One Ring. Hello, I Stole the One Ring. And Light of the King. Hello. And Light of the King, I believe you went to our little Oscar party this past weekend. So for those of you who may have come a little bit late, this is Eve, who has graciously decided to join me and to read our Jane Austen winner for Rewrite Tolkien. Yeah, thank you. What? I don't know why there is a 1 after my name, Light of the King. I don't either, Light of the King. And I Stole the One Ring was so caught up in that, yes. So, well done, well read.
Oh, thank you. It was a great story. It was very easy to get into.
So, this actually, since I talked about Light of the King going to our Oscar party, that brings us into a nice little
Thank
discussion.
You, Light of the King.
Light of the King, great. Well, great reading. Well done, yes. Since Light of the King went to our Oscar party, which sadly I was not able to attend, first one ever. I felt so bad. I didn't even watch the Oscars. I was at my best friend's wedding, and I got this baby. Yes. It's fun going to geek weddings because weird stuff happens.
Yeah, this sounded like the most epic wedding of all time.
It was pretty amazing. The bride and groom came out through TARDIS doors. There were toy dinosaurs at every table, so just about everybody was doing wash impressions from Firefly. What else was there? The bridesmaids serenaded the bride and groom with their own filked version of the theme to the Never-Ending Story.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
There is video of it on YouTube, and it was amazing. Like, even the DJ was like, that was the most epic thing I've ever seen at a wedding. And then, to top it all off, after the bride tossed the bouquet, the groom tossed Thor's hammer. Because of course he would.
Of course he would.
And by the way, I think this needs to be a thing at all weddings from now on.
Wasn't there pie too?
Yes, there was. Instead of wedding cake, there was wedding pie because Jonathan, the groom, is a pie maker.
Oh, cool.
And so, as you can see, I caught the hammer. I get to keep this forever. And no, this does not mean I'm getting married soon. This means I now possess the power of Thor.
It just means he's worthy.
It means one day I might get Natalie Portman. No, not likely.
Almost inevitable at this point. Almost inevitable.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend.
I like Light's rendition of the Never-Ending Story theme.
Nice. Pardon me if my voice sounds scratchy and I cough a lot. I was getting over a cold. I'm over the cold. I am, however, not over the cough, which sticks around for months. Yeah. So, lucky me, I get to do lots of live shows and podcasts and voice acting while having a scratchy voice. So, let's talk about the Oscars for a little bit. There. Yay, Oscars! So, like I said, I didn't get a chance to watch them. I discovered the results on the drive home, listening to them on the radio. Did you watch them at all?
I did not watch them. I had a thing I was doing that evening, and by the time I got home, they were half over. I did watch some clips later on YouTube, but I didn't watch the whole ceremony.
Yeah, I watched like some of the clips, and I loved the pizza delivery stuff.
Yes.
I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
I was thrilled that Lupita Nyong'o won Best Supporting Actress.
Me too. I actually went to a screening of 12 Years a Slave, and they had Lupita Nyong'o as well as Benedict Cumberbatch and Chiwetel Ejiofor and the director, and just a ton of people there at the panel afterwards for a Q&A. And it was just really interesting to hear all of them talk about how they approach their roles and talk about getting down there early and really getting a sense of the South and a sense of that sort of land and what it was like in that time, the heat and the atmosphere. And she was so young. I think she was still in school or just out of school when she got that role. It was one of her first acting roles, and she talked a little bit about her preparations, like the little straw dolls that the character was making. That was her idea. She had done all this research about slaves at the time and trying to find things that would help her get a feel for the character, and it was phenomenal. So I was also really, really glad she won.
Yeah, like what really blew me away with her was I was listening to an interview with her on NPR leading up to the movie's release, and she was talking about how she had all these prosthetics on her back for all the scars that she had for Patsy. And she got really tired at one point of like having to sit down in a makeup chair for 6 hours a day to have them put on when it was just going to happen every day. So one day she decided, you know what? I'm just going to leave them on and go home with these scars on my back so that I don't have to show up on set at 3 a.m. for an 8 a.m. shoot. And so she did that and sort of had like this like incredibly emotional night because even though they weren't real scars, she had to treat them like they were real scars. So she had to like sleep on her stomach. She had to be very mindful of everything. She had to be very careful when she was showering. And it like really, for her, created this very strong connection with Patsy. And like, and for me, like with 12 Years a Slave, like the biggest tragedy in that whole movie was that Solomon had to leave Patsy behind.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, well, what was so interesting about that story, one of the things that was so interesting about the story was that every character, no character was like 100% innocent.
Right.
Even Solomon, who had to leave all these other people behind because there was no way he could save them, but he still had to carry that guilt for the rest of his life. And then you had, I don't remember the name of the plantation owner that Benedict Cumberbatch was playing, but he talked about him, and he basically said, if you think about it, he seems like a good man, but he might actually be one of the worst people because he actually recognizes that what's happening is wrong, and he chooses to turn a blind eye to it because of his own debts and because of his own interests.
Right.
So it is a really interesting...
It was one of the most amazing looks at slavery I've ever seen on film. And Temple is here. Hello, Temple. And she says she has a cold. I'm so sorry.
Everybody has a cold.
I know the feeling.
The last month, I think 90% of the people that I know have been, like, really sick.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It was bad, and, like, I couldn't even take time off of work when I was sick because I had to get this I Love Lucy done. So, like, I'm sitting there at my desk just coughing like crazy.
Healthy vibes. Healthy vibes to everyone.
Yes. Let's be done with this.
So, 12 Years a Slave.
12 Years a Slave was great. Gravity was a big winner, which I loved. I thought, as a technical achievement, it was a fantastic movie. As an actual narrative, it was kind of like stuff we've seen before.
Yeah, it was interesting with Gravity because I didn't see it. I haven't seen a lot of movies in the theater this year, but with Gravity, the first couple weeks after it came out, I felt like I just heard, oh, it's okay, it's fine, it's whatever. And then suddenly it took off as like, oh my gosh, you have to see Gravity, it's so amazing. I think at first people were focusing more on it as a narrative and more just as an entertainment.
Yeah.
And then people started drawing attention to the technical side and the directing side, and then suddenly it was everybody could only talk about how amazing it was visually and how amazing an accomplishment it was. But it makes me kind of sorry that I started out with that impression of like, it's okay, you might as well skip it, because I probably might have seen it earlier.
I was like totally psyched about it from like the first trailer, because I'm a space nerd. Mm-hmm. So part of me was like, oh yes, a movie that takes place in space and looks like they're really gonna do like actual space stuff in it. And then, like, I mean, the first trailer, like, I found myself, like, holding my breath during it because it was so intense.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for, like, the first 15 minutes of the movie, which, by the way, is all one shot.
Wow.
Like, I was holding my breath that whole time. But, I mean, narratively speaking, it's a survival movie. Like, there wasn't really much more to it. Like, George Clooney was as Clooney as you could get in that movie. Like, he was, like, one step shy of just being freaking Buzz Lightyear. But he was fun. It was good, and I thought Sandra Bullock was probably one of the best performances I've seen from her, like, ever.
I really like her. I think she's very talented. She's done a lot of ridiculous stuff, but I think she's a very talented actress.
She has,
and she's
for
very
sure.
game for anything.
And Temple is saying Alfonso Cuarón is an amazing director. I haven't seen anything of his that I haven't liked.
Temple, I have to disagree. I mean, not that he is an amazing director, but I did not care for the third Lord of the Rings movie at all. Not Lord of the Rings, the third Harry Potter movie. At all. I mean, no, not at all.
Okay.
It was just, I had a lot of issues with
okay, that was kind of my favorite.
See, it's probably my favorite of the books. I just didn't like a lot of the choices they made in the movie.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean he's not an amazing director.
I
think he had an approach to the material that is not what I would have liked him to have taken.
Okay, that's fair.
But I think he tried to give it more mainstream appeal, which he may have succeeded in doing, but I felt like it lost some of the appeal of the books for themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see that.
And it had more of a feel of a more typical teen movie in a lot of ways, which
I suppose,
I
but
didn't like.
I mean, that for me, like, the first two really felt like very typical kids movies for me.
No, I'm not disagreeing there.
Yeah.
But I thought they were more charming. I thought the third one lost a lot of the charm.
Yeah, like, well, the third one did go darker, which for me personally, that's kind of what I liked about it. But
I liked the darkness in the later ones, but it was a different sort of...
Yeah.
I just felt like the third one was trying harder to have a mainstream appeal, and it did end up feeling more like a kind of a teen movie, which...
Okay.
And there were some...
I can see that.
Some things about the material that I thought were important that were left out, that were replaced by things that didn't feel necessary. But, again, just my opinion.
Light of the King. Hope you got my email. Yes, I did, and I'm sorry that I didn't respond, and thank you so much for your kind words about the show. Light of the King is saying, was wondering about the Disney
Tolkien video.
Yeah,
tell.
That didn't happen. I shot a lot of stuff and just could not find the time to edit it together. I have this huge list of things that I was going to make for our Disney Ringer Day, which was last Saturday, of how to turn your trip to Disneyland into a quest through Middle Earth.
Right. I remember you were talking about that at your birthday a little bit.
Yeah. And so, like, as my normal birthday tradition is, I go to Disneyland. So I brought my camera with me. I shot all this stuff, and I just couldn't edit it in time, and so I tried just writing it up as an article, and then that didn't happen because, like, seriously, my life has just been so utterly consumed by I Love Lucy, which is now not so much the case as of yesterday. The final disc is now in revisions, so all the heavy lifting on my part is done. But oh my god, that was months and months of like the craziest Blu-ray work I've ever done. So now I can spend a little bit more time focusing. So hopefully I can put something together that will have us that will be ready for Ringer Day next year. Light of the King is saying, I missed Ringer Day, but Kathy did a great job of making it super Tolkien inspired. That's good.
I hope I can make it to Ringer Day next year. I missed it this year.
Yeah, it should be fun. I saw a lot of pictures from it. It looked like a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like a lot of people were enjoying themselves. And it was a rainy day, too, so like it probably wouldn't have been that crowded. So yeah, Gravity I loved. Some of the other, well, I mean, we sort of have to address the elephant in the room, which is this is the first year that a Peter Jackson Tolkien movie walked away with no Oscars. Which was a disappointment, but at the same time, this year I felt like this movie, more than other years, had a lot of really tough competition. Mm-hmm. Like,
which ones was it nominated for?
It was nominated for Best Sound Design, Best Editing, and Best Visual Effects, I believe.
The visual effects were amazing.
The visual effects were great, but it went to Gravity, and it really deserved to go to Gravity. Okay. Like, I mean, I'm not disparaging Weta's work at all. They always do a phenomenal job. Their Smaug was beyond all my wildest expectations. But when all is said and done, Gravity just really sort of knocked it out of the park. And I can't be upset about that because Gravity's work was so good. The visual effects work in Gravity was so well done. And honestly, I sort of feel like the visual effects are even going to be better for There and Back Again.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have Smaug attacking Lake Town. We're going to have the Battle of Five Armies.
That's true, isn't it? Like, that Gravity got all three of the ones that Smaug was nominated for.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe we just have to hope that next year there's
Don't make Gravity. Anything next year, Alfonso Cuarón.
Stop making phenomenal things.
So yeah.
But yeah, there's going to be a lot of good stuff in There and Back Again.
So. Oh yeah, I think this is the one that I'm truly psyched for. Mm-hmm. Like, I was definitely excited for An Unexpected Journey just because it's a return to Middle Earth after 10 years. And then Desolation of Smaug. I was excited to see Smaug, but as for everything else, I was like, yeah, okay. I'm curious to see it, but what I really want to see is Smaug.
Yeah. Well, it's that second movie in a trilogy thing where a lot of it is place setting, but Smaug was just unbelievable, and the whole sequence in the mines was so good, and just there was a lot of good. I loved the barrel ride down the river.
I loved the barrel ride. I loved Bomber's bits.
Yes.
Like, Bomber is my hero. I don't care what anybody else says. And Jan is here now, and so sorry I'm late. I forgot about the time difference. Oh yeah, that's probably why everybody's coming in late.
Oh, that might be.
The time difference, yes.
That might be.
So
it's spring though.
yeah, we get more daylight now. So
thank goodness.
But everything you missed will be up on YouTube later today, so don't worry.
And that includes the really impressive winner of the Jane Austen
the rewrite
rewrite contest, which is a great story. So
it really was.
You should read it.
I was very impressed. I stole the One Ring. Did I say hi to Temple? I believe you did. Everybody's saying hi to each other in the chat. I love that everybody is like, we're all becoming friends. So like some of the other big winners at the Oscars, well, it's not Lord of the Rings, but it is Lord of the Rings adjacent. Cate Blanchett winning Best Actress for Blue Jasmine.
Yeah.
While I didn't really care for the movie all that much, I thought Cate Blanchett's performance was amazing.
I haven't seen the movie. I gotta leave this one to you. I haven't seen it yet. I need to, though. I've heard good things.
Okay, my normal I've had this running gag where whenever I talk about a movie that was a big contender for the Oscars this year, I always feel like I have to start it off by saying, well, it's not a happy movie.
None of them, very few of them were.
Very few of these were very happy movies. Let's see, we got a lot of stuff going on in the chat now all of a sudden. Jan is talking.
Oh, the winner.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good story. Very good story.
Josh, we've been chatting every week and there hasn't been a show.
Half an Austen Lord of the Rings? Oh.
Okay. Temple saying, I have half an Austen LOTR story written. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, post it somewhere. Send a link.
Yeah, post it in the message boards, email me, post it to our Facebook page. Like, I love, like, all these crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. All these crazy crossovers.
Crossovers are great. And
speaking of which, we should get to our theme for March.
Do tell.
Yeah. Let's just bring that up. Okay. Even though there's nobody in the other chat, I like to keep it up just in case. Our theme, we announced it on Torn yesterday, but our theme for Rewrite Tolkien for March is... That's wrong. Whoops. Spoiler. Where is it?
Wait, I looked away. What did you spoil?
Oh, here it is. Douglas Adams. We're going to be doing all Douglas Adams stuff, and you can either do a crossover. The one I'm really hoping a lot of people will do are Hitchhiker's Guide style entries about stuff from Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Like, the Hitchhiker's Guide has this to say about Mordor. Don't go there.
One does not simply walk into it.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to Middle-earth has this to say about traveling to Mordor. Don't.
Is that our author? Jill Richardson, is that our author there?
I don't know. Oh, Jill, Ustreamer29. You are Jill, the writer of the.
Oh, congratulations!
Congratulations! It was a fantastic story.
It was.
I loved it.
Oh, it was. I loved it.
I hope you were here to listen to Eve read it.
I was excited to get to read it. It was so good. I loved it.
Yeah.
Great job.
And Jan is saying, I've never read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I guess I should. You absolutely should. It is one of the most amazing books I've ever read. And it's also a great radio play, if you ever want to listen to that sometime. And a great BBC series. Yeah. And a pretty decent Hollywood movie.
An okay movie, which stars Martin Freeman, which gives it extra points in this company.
Yes, exactly.
So
I actually made that joke about it.
I admit not blown away by the... Oh, yeah, you did, about if Bilbo meets...
Bilbo meets Arthur Dent and realize, oh my god, they're being played by the same guy!
Long-lost Hobbit brother. Or ancestor or something.
I don't know what they are, because they're both pretty similar in demeanor.
Oh, thank you. I thought the first 30 seconds was the best 30 seconds anyway, so you didn't miss much.
I heard.
But no, I think it'll be going up on YouTube.
I heard the first line and cut it out. Love the accent for 30 seconds. Yes, don't worry. This is all going to go up on YouTube as soon as we're done. So, and I'll post links to it on the Facebook site and on Twitter and everything. And I really should start posting articles about the book club on Torn.
You should.
I think we might get a bigger audience that way. And Light of the King hasn't read it.
Light of the King. Good. Become a reader.
Yes.
Being a reader is awesome.
Yes, it is.
And Hitchhiker's Guide is a pretty quick read. It's intimidatingly large, but it's a pretty quick read, and it's so much fun.
It is. You find yourself just speeding through it because you're like, this is amazing, this is hilarious, and you just want to keep going because it's so unbelievably absurd.
Yeah, and it's very light.
But it's like that weird kind of like absurd logic that shouldn't make sense, but when you think about it, does make sense. Like the big one was flying is just when you fall and miss the ground. there's nothing factually wrong in that statement, but
yeah, and if you're active in geekdom, there are a lot of things that are kind of common memes and things that come up a lot that you don't even necessarily realize are from Hitchhiker's Guide until you read Hitchhiker's Guide.
Well, like the number 42 for one, which is ubiquitous in everything geeky.
Right, and of course the towel thing.
The towel thing.
But don't panic. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things.
Yep. So, the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster.
Of course.
So yeah, again...
The restaurant at the end of the universe.
Yes. So it will be... So Rewrite Tolkien is going to be The Hobbit in the style of Douglas Adams, which I highly recommend people try to participate in. Yes. Thank you. My brain don't work. I lost an hour of sleep.
You're trying to watch 3 chats and a thing at the same time. It's
what?
Okay.
No. Jan is saying, yeah, I've been trying to talk about Torn Book Club on the chat yesterday and Torn Tuesday this week. Not many people even know about it. This is true. Even though we've got like almost 800 fans on Facebook, like it doesn't seem like enough people really know about it. I think it's just like an impulse like, and nobody goes back to look at it.
Yeah. Well, the other problem is with Facebook, they've got that thing where a lot of the times you post on the page and it never goes out to anybody.
Yeah.
So you like things, but you still have to go to the effort of actually going to the page to see most of the stuff that they post. So
yeah, it's
a bad thing, but there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
Like, the Torn Book Club, do they have a Twitter specifically, or just the one
ring? No, there's a Twitter specifically for Torn Book Club.
Okay.
I just followed you on it, so
oh, nice.
So follow me back.
I know I'm following One Ring, but I'm not following Torn Book Club, so I'll have to find it.
Yeah.
We'll post links everywhere.
Just check your latest follower.
Yes.
And Light of the King and Jan mentioned it on a Torn Tuesday, and thank you both for that.
Thanks, guys. Keep spreading the word.
So, with that in mind, well, since we're talking book club stuff, before we get into our discussion of the February book of the month, let's talk very quickly about the March book of the month.
Ooh.
Since March is going to be sci-fi.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna post your Facebook page on there as well, so that people can find you and like you and
then can fail to see the posts that I make.
Exactly. So since March is sci-fi month, I sort of racked my brain trying to find like a good sci-fi book for us to read for March. And finally landed on this one. It's called Orphans of the Sky by Robert Heinlein, who, if you're at all a sci-fi fan, you probably know him better as the writer of Stranger in a Strange Land and Starship Troopers. And this is one of his lesser-known books, but it keeps getting recommended to me by so many other people. I'm like, okay, finally, I'm just going to read this thing, and I'm taking you all with me.
That's cool. I haven't read much Heinlein before. I do tend more toward the fantasy side of things.
Right.
But I like some sci-fi, too.
I love sci-fi, and the only Heinlein book I've ever read was Starship Troopers, which the movie does not do it justice in any way whatsoever.
Okay, so we have someone in the One Ring chat room over here.
Yeah, Strongbow. Hello.
Book club, yes.
Yes, Hi. This is the Torn Book Club. Saying, I have no idea what's going on. So yeah, Orphans of the Sky. It's a fairly short read. I checked out the page count is like 230 something. The audiobook is only about 4.5 hours long. So like that's pretty short, and we do have sort of a truncated month this time. So this should be a pretty quick and easy read. What fascinated me about it was it's a story about a generational ship, which, if you're not familiar with the concept of a generational ship, it's a concept for long distance space travel. Where rather than keeping the people in...
sometimes audio is good. If you've got a good reader, sometimes audio is an easier way to get through.
I usually do the audiobooks myself. So with generational ships, rather than keep the crew in cryostasis the entire time, what they'll do instead is keep them awake and living and going through their lives and basically sort of living out their lives on this ship. And so what we see here is a generational ship that's now a couple generations down the line. And so people, let's see.
Young adult novels are pretty good.
Yeah, young adult. Yeah.
Never seen Star Wars. You should get on that. Actually, my sister is guilty of that too. I spent most of our childhood trying to get her to watch them, but it wasn't until she started dating a geek, who she's now married to, that she finally started watching some of the stuff that I'd been trying to get her to watch for years. So I was very glad to get someone else on my side.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but I don't really call Star Wars science fiction. I call it more science fantasy. Yeah. I mean, I love it, and, having said that, I'm catching up on the Clone Wars right now, now that it's up on Netflix, and oh my god, is it good!
That's what I've heard. I haven't watched it yet, but it's on my to-watch list, because I've heard nothing but how amazing it is.
Like, I was stunned by how good it was. Like, basically, in like one 22-minute episode, it gives Anakin and Padme a better relationship than 3 prequel movies did.
That's not hard.
No, it's not hard, and it took no effort. But I was like, "Oh my god, this is what the prequel movie should have been." I mean, the animation style is very like cartoony, but I'm actually okay with that. But yeah, like it even like created a Jar Jar Binks that doesn't fill me with blinding white hot rage. He just mildly annoys me now. So, good on you, Clone Wars. But yeah, like they have all these great episodes that like really sort of like give you good reasons for Anakin to be enraged. Like discovering that an entire planet has been kidnapped by slavers and suddenly having the rage of having been a slave himself overshadow his own Jedi training. Like, that actually makes sense. Mm-hmm. That's actually good motivation. Or like, there was this fantastic story arc where they were trying to infiltrate a prison, or the Jedi were trying to infiltrate a prison to get information on a suspected plot against the Chancellor. And so in order to do this, they had to fake Obi-Wan's death, and basically in order to sell that Obi-Wan had died, they had to actually make Anakin believe he had died, so he was not in on it. And so of course, like, Anakin goes flying off into a blind rage, not realizing that now the person who had supposedly killed Obi-Wan Kenobi is now being impersonated by Obi-Wan Kenobi. So he's getting into fights with him and he's ready to kill him, which I thought, like, holy cow, would that have been an amazing way to turn Anakin to the dark side? Have him unwittingly kill his best friend.
Well, I'll give you this, Jan. I don't think everybody's going to hate you, because the examples you put on there are awesome examples. If you came in and said, like, Twilight is greater than Star Wars, then you might be in trouble.
Yeah.
But those are all good things, too. Those
Let's
are
see,
all
what is
awesome,
he
too.
saying? Pirates of the Caribbean is better than Star
Wars. There were a lot of
Wars.
problems with the prequel trilogy. It wasn't just the performances. It was in the writing. It was in the direction.
Yeah.
There was pretty much the only really good thing was the costume design. And maybe the visual effects.
Yeah.
But those could have been a lot better than they were.
They could have been.
But the original trilogy has just so much heart in it, and the novels are really good, and Clone Wars has come along and given us some new stuff that's really good.
I liked a number of the novels. I haven't read as many as I probably should. Mm-hmm. I loved the Timothy Zahn trilogy.
Yes.
That was amazing, and like, I'm still, like, devastated that in Episode 7 they're not going to have Grand Admiral Thrawn. Like, I would love to see Thrawn on screen.
Yeah.
Played by Benedict Cumberbatch. That would be amazing.
Oh, that would be amazing. I would love to see that happen, too.
But, yeah, like, I mean, I thought, like, when you really look at Episode 4, just, like, from a storytelling standpoint, it's very basic. Mm-hmm. But Empire Strikes Back is where it really explodes, and like I was actually just watching a YouTube video about like the 10 greatest plot twists, and number 2 was Empire Strikes Back, and which I mean now it's like everybody knows, but back then, and I have a vague recollection of this. I was maybe like 3 or 4 when Empire Strikes Back came out, and I got into Star Wars at a very early age, and I remember hitting that scene where Darth Vader tells Luke that he's his father, and for the longest time that scene made no sense to me. Like, and there was apparently this very collective denial of no, that cannot be true.
Yeah. Well, Temple, that's actually a good point, because one thing that's been discussed a lot over the years, but is that Tolkien originated a lot of what we now think of as the basic tropes of fantasy.
Right,
of
right,
like the wise mentor character and the young hero that has to kind of come into himself and come into his own, and a lot of the things that Tolkien introduced for us are things that have become very, they've become tropes.
Yeah.
But he was the one who gave them to us in the first place. There was I don't remember what, I'm trying to remember the name of the webcomic. I should. There was one, they made a joke about that when the third Lord of the Rings movie, I think, was coming out.
Oh, I think I read this one, yeah.
The older guy gave the younger one a copy of Lord of the Rings and said, before the movies come out, you need to read this, because don't let your first impressions be formed by the movies. You need to read the books first. And so he read it, and he came back and said, well, look, this guy is basically just, he's just Dumbledore, and this guy is just this, and this Tolkien guy is a hack. He's copying off of all the...
I think I read that. I think that was like Hijinks Ensue or something like that, maybe. Or was it XKCD?
No, it wasn't XKCD. I think maybe it was Hijinks Ensue. No, it was PvP.
Oh, okay,
PvP.
right,
It was
okay.
Player versus player.
Player versus player, right.
Gotta give credit.
Yes.
But yeah, that being the point, being that he started a lot of those things, and because he's so well established and so well known, and those things work so well, they've become kind of the go-to tropes for the genre.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can also go with what George Lucas talked about, which was that this all comes from the very basic hero mythology that was broken down by Joseph Campbell. It's called The Hero's Journey, and this is like it's basically like the story structure for every major myth that has ever been written. Like, and I can't remember all of it, but there's like 7 major character types. There's like the elder. There's the hero, who usually starts off as your basic everyman, who then becomes the one who needs to save the day. You've got the person who sends the hero on their quest. You've got the obstacle, who is the villain. The wise elder, who at one point in the story needs to leave so that the hero can complete the journey on his own. And so it's like it's all these very basic tropes, but apparently it's there in everything, which is interesting. And like I'm just kind of fascinated by like how did all these tropes start? If it goes back so far, like who first came up with the idea of this like little basic everyman is the one who will save the day, as opposed to like our glorious king?
Yeah, well, it's hard to say, because like you were saying, they show up as early as ancient myths, ancient Greek mythology, and those things were all
and like
kind of,
even biblical stuff like David and Goliath.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and a lot of that started with verbal tradition.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any way to say who really came up with this, but somehow it all kind of came together naturally.
Yeah, and maybe it is part of our own human nature to want to root for the underdog.
Yeah, and to relate best to a story that's centered around someone like us.
Right.
Someone who ends up going through extraordinary things, but who starts out as someone you can relate to, who isn't like the king, the god, the magical being. It's the person living their life who is then thrown into circumstances, that are extraordinary.
And you know what? That actually is a perfect transition to King Arthur. See what I did there?
Yep. Fall of Arthur.
So, yeah, we haven't really talked about the Fall of Arthur yet, which we should, since it was our book of the month. But, I mean, even the King Arthur story was very much like, not in this book, but in the general myth, is King Arthur was a kid who didn't know that he had this destiny and sort of gets it foisted upon him when he...
By the wise mentor character.
By the wise mentor, who sort of leads him to accidentally pull the sword out of the stone.
Right.
If you're reading the Thomas Mallory version.
Right.
Let's see, what is this?
Exactly. We want to believe that we can all achieve greatness no matter how ordinary we are. That's Temple.
Temple saying that, and that's absolutely true. And yeah, it is sort of like a... It's a bit of wish fulfillment, but I mean, that's what storytelling is when you get right down to it. It's fulfilling a fantasy we have, or in some more tangible sense. So let's talk a little bit about the Fall of Arthur, shall we? This is it was an epic poem. It was done in an epic poem style by Tolkien, which he kind of abandoned about halfway through to work on that whole Middle Earth thing. Then that went nowhere.
Right. He should have stuck with this.
He should have stuck with Arthur. Really, I mean, like,
he wouldn't have languished in obscurity with that, whatever that Lord of the whatever it was that.
Yeah,
I
don't know what that is. Yeah, but and this actually isn't the first Arthur story that he's done. He also did a version of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which I still have never read, but probably should. But This one is about the final chapter of the Arthur tale, which is why it's called The Fall of Arthur. So it sort of picks up with...
although he never actually quite made it to the fall.
No, he kind of stopped writing it about halfway through.
But it's interesting. I'm not a poetic scholar. I don't know if anybody in the room is a scholar of poetry, but the style of it is really interesting because it's not rhyming meter. It's alliterative.
Right.
So each line uses a lot of the same sounds, and it does give it a very smooth sound to it. Which is...
And that's cool. And I didn't even realize the alliteration of it. I was just sort of reading it.
I was reading it, but I remembered I was about halfway through it when I remembered it's describing it as an alliterative style, and then I started watching for it and noticed that every line has the repetition of sounds.
That's cool. I like that.
So, fair is fey woman and fell-minded, in the world walking for the woe of men, fate set her forth, fair she deemed him.
Well, now that you point it out, of course, it's pretty obvious.
But it never interferes with the flow of the verse. He very carefully chose his words. And so it's an interesting challenge that he set himself to write it in that style.
Well, I mean, that's what Tolkien loved to do. He loved to challenge himself linguistically. And I think, personally, I would have loved to have seen, him take this to the end. Even if it put off, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings a few years. Because this was a really interesting take on the Fall of Arthur. And what does Light of the Kings say?
Yeah, it was similar to the Sigurd and Gudrun
style. Yeah. Because that's another one that Tolkien wrote was his version of Sigurd and Gudrun. Which is another one I haven't read. But, I mean, okay, so story-wise what we have here is it starts out with Arthur
conquering the heathens.
Yeah, conquering the world. He has left Camelot at the urging of his general Mordred.
His loyal subject Mordred, who assures him he will hold Britain safe until Arthur gets back.
I trust you, Mordred. There is absolutely nothing ominous in your name. And so, of course... I'm
sure that's going to go real well for him.
So, while Arthur is away, the Mordred shall play. And he does. He stages a coup. He takes over Camelot. And essentially, you were telling me earlier, or the way you described it was very well done, his interaction with Guinevere. How he basically just gave her the choice, my wife or be my slave.
Yeah, it's interesting when you've read, and I've only read a few different versions of the Arthur myth, but one of the things that makes Arthur and Camelot so fascinating is that everyone who's approached it has taken a slightly different... Events happen slightly differently in every different version.
And Sexy Hobbit is here. Hello, Sexy Hobbit.
But yeah, Temple, I was also looking to see if there was an audio version, and it doesn't look like there is yet.
There isn't. I looked for it too, and sadly there is not. If there was, I would have posted it.
Yeah, but that was one thing that I was curious about this poem, because it is kind of apparently a specific style of medieval poetry that I was wondering if there was a specific way of reading it, because a lot of those old styles had a kind of a traditional way of approaching the poem, and I don't know if this style does. So,
I haven't read enough of them to really know for certain. So like as far as like the story goes, so we have Mordred taking over Camelot, and what I found interesting in this one was that it doesn't really point out specifically whether or not Mordred is Arthur's son.
Aw, thanks, Light.
Light say, Eve, you should read it for the audiobook. You know what? I think you do a darn good job.
First, I've got to find out if there's a correct way to read this this style of poetry.
This is true. It's never really said specifically whether or not Mordred is his son. Because I've seen other versions where Mordred is not Arthur's son. He's, in fact, just a very high-ranking general in his army who decides to just take over.
Mm-hmm. And it's clear in the poem that whether Mordred is... It doesn't specify whether it's his son, and it never mentions Morghese or any of the other characters associated with that part of the legend. But he's clearly very highly ranked and very well trusted advisor, whatever his position is in the court, because he's able to encourage Arthur to go off and smite the heathens and basically assume he'll be left in charge in Arthur's absence, which is what happens. And then he basically takes over. He gives Guinevere a choice of being his wife or his love slave, and gives her a couple of hours to decide, and she turns around and escapes.
Yeah, she's like, you know what? I'm choosing option number 3,
right.
Going away.
But that's another thing I noticed that was interesting was this poem is not the kindest to Guinevere that I've seen.
No,
as far
it's really
as the
not.
version of events. It's not necessarily unfair to her, but it really does blatantly lay the whole breaking of the Round Table at her feet.
Yeah.
And it also says, when it goes back in the canto when we visit with Lancelot, and it goes back and talks a little bit about the events of the breaking of the Round Table and Lancelot and Guinevere's relationship.
Right, yeah.
And how basically after he rescued her from the fire, he was so distraught by his betrayal of his king that he became despondent.
And he banishes himself.
He banishes himself, and the two of them go away to Joyous Gard, to Lancelot's home, and then... But he's so broken up over what he's done that Guinevere, it basically says she doesn't recognize the man that she loves in him, and she is not happy because he's despondent and she's away from everything that made her happy in court, basically being the queen and having all the riches and the comforts of the court.
And so she goes back to Camelot and has like this sort of kind of awkward reconciliation with Arthur.
Mm-hmm. But she gets to go back to being the queen, and Lancelot is left alone.
Right. And you would mention another part where, like, towards the end of one of the cantos, it talks about Lancelot seemingly dying.
Yeah, that was one thing I know in the legend he doesn't die at this point, but the poem really does come close to making it sound like he just dies. Arthur suggests, when they find out what Mordred has done, Arthur has Gawain with him out in the field, and they receive the word of what Mordred has done, and they start turning their people around and heading back. But they have to see who they can recruit to come with them and help get Mordred off Arthur's throne. And Arthur says he wants to send word to Lancelot and the other knights who left with him. And Gawain suggests that he doesn't. He says, these people, you can't trust them, and I would rather have a small number of people that we know are loyal than a whole bunch of people who might turn around and betray you. But he says specifically of Lancelot, just see if he comes. Maybe he'll hear and he'll come without being asked. So don't ask him, but we'll see if he comes. And Christopher Tolkien talks a little bit about that. I only read part of I got about halfway through the description afterwards in the book, but he was talking about how that's different from the other version where Lancelot has slain two of Gawain's brothers accidentally, but he killed them in rescuing Guinevere, and Gawain hates him.
Right. And, I mean, like, we definitely got, like, a sense in this that Gawain doesn't trust Lancelot.
Right, but he does respect him, and he makes it sound as if Lancelot comes back, we should trust him. Don't ask him, but he may take it upon himself. And
so, like, Arthur sort of, like...
Yes, it says death was before him, among, like, everything.
Yeah, it does.
Lancelot, low and softly to himself singing, the sun greeted, life from darkness, lifted shining in the dome of heaven, by death exalted. And then... let's see, death was before him, and his day setting beyond the tides of time, to return never among waking men while the world lasted. Kind of sounds like he died.
It does sound like he died, but like, I mean, part of me was wondering if like it was more of a metaphorical death, because like he's sitting there waiting for Arthur to send word, "Come join me,"
right? And
he never gets it,
right?
And so it's like, okay, is it a metaphorical death because he now belongs to no king, or like?
And he's resigned himself that he will never re-enter this world of knighthood and this world of people that he...
Or is it like his heart breaks so much that he actually dies?
Yeah, I don't know.
And...
I read back through this a couple of times because I felt like...
Because
it sounded like he died. But...
I mean, like it says, the poem ends about halfway through, so we never get to the actual battle of Camlan, where Arthur and Mordred have their final duel. Which, in the Mallory version, Lancelot comes in and is able to sort of even the playing field a little bit with between Arthur and Mordred. But, yeah, we don't have that. We don't really see where it would have gone.
Yeah, and it's an interesting choice in this poem that they specifically say... You know, Arthur's waiting to see if Lancelot comes to help him. Lancelot is waiting to see if Arthur calls for him. Guinevere, after she escapes, goes to her father's castle where nobody is anymore.
It's abandoned.
And is kind of hoping to herself that Lancelot will hear and come to save her, but she doesn't. So none of them reach out to each other. And they're all kind of waiting to see if the other one, you know, who takes the first step. And at least at the place the poem reaches, nobody's taken the first step. They're all just kind of waiting to see if somebody else will, which... I don't know, you know, what exactly Tolkien's idea was when he made that choice, but it's clearly in there, and it's an interesting look at the relationship.
Yeah, and we should take a second to say hello to Eva, because Eva is here now.
Hello.
And she's asking, did it start early? Actually, no, it started on time. It's daylight savings time. So we actually started an hour earlier than we would have, but it's still 12. Or almost 1 our time. So, yes, sorry, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of people come in a little late.
Yeah, I stole the One Ring. Right when Josh starts talking about the book, my internet fails me. I'm sorry, I stole the One Ring.
I was almost late because of daylight savings time, so...
So was I. I almost didn't wake up in time. So yeah, it was a little awkward today with daylight savings, but... Whatever you missed, we'll put up on YouTube, so you'll be able to see it all. So, yeah, like, this was a really interesting take on the Arthur legend. Because, like, I used to, like, be really fascinated by Arthur, and so I read a lot of, like, different Arthur myths, and all the different stories that would happen with him, and... all the different perspectives. Like, I mean, the one that we all really know is the Thomas Mallory version, which was adapted into the movie Excalibur, which I still love. I love that movie.
Yeah.
But it also established a lot of the tropes with the Arthur legend that we've come to accept as part of the Arthur legend, like the Sword in the Stone, the Sword Excalibur to begin with.
The Lady of the Lake and Morgana Le Fay. And...
the death of Uther Pendragon and the illegitimacy of Arthur's birth. Mordred being his own illegitimate son.
Aw, you're not being punished. It's all going to be up on YouTube after.
Oh, yes, but... Oh, I'm sorry, I stole the One Ring, because didn't this happen to you, like, before with another one of the Book of the Month where we started talking about it and your internet punked out on you? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Temple, I liked that too. I really I wish I'd gotten all the way through it, the afterward stuff, because there are a lot of those things that I've never read and I'm not familiar with, and just having them laid out and compared that way was so cool and interesting. Just saying, like, here's how, you know, in this one he's going to conquer Rome, basically, whereas in Fall of Arthur, he says he's defending Rome.
Right.
But
and Light of the King is bringing up the King Arthur movie with Ian Griffith and Clive Owen.
I haven't yet. I haven't seen it yet.
It was an okay movie.
Yeah.
I didn't like it as much as I was hoping I would. I mean, it definitely like goes more into the Roman aspect of it all. Like King Arthur or Arthur is actually a Roman soldier, which is another one of the supposed origins of the Arthur legend. Was that he was a Roman soldier who was stationed in Britain as the Romans were leaving. So he was like one of the last battalions to stay behind, and sort of went native, so to speak.
King Arthur's kind of like the first comic book superhero.
He really is.
Different origins and different stories depending on what authors got their hands on him. There are always elements in common, but the story changes depending on who's writing it.
Yeah, and in this version, Guinevere is like a warrior picked, played by Keira Knightley.
Ooh.
And actually, it was pretty cool. And Merlin was sort of like he was still a wizard, but he was more like a metaphorical magic man for the Picts.
Okay.
And Ian Griffith plays Lancelot, which was kind of...
Keira Knightley in woad paint, interesting.
Yeah,
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, they were woads, not Picts, sorry. It's been a while since I saw it. But yeah, I mean, it was like your typical sort of action movie. Like lot of big action set pieces. Stellan Skarsgård plays like the big bad Saxon who comes in to kill everybody, and he was actually kind of scary.
Interesting parts. I saw a movie years and years ago, and I can't remember the name of it, but she was like the daughter of Robin Hood. It was not a good movie, but it was entertaining. It was bad, but it was bad in a funny way.
That sounds fascinating.
And she was off in, archery gear and running around Sherwood Forest.
Really?
Yeah. It was ludicrous and really, really entertaining.
I might need to try to find this. That sounds amazing.
But the Saxons, you were saying.
So yeah, like, and I mean, that was like one of the big things with Arthur was fending off the Saxon invasion.
And that was one of the things they were discussing in the book, is that apparently, where in the in Mallory's version,
right,
he's been contacted by the Emperor of Rome, basically saying, you owe us this tribute that you haven't sent, and also you've conquered a bunch of our lands, stop it, give them back.
Right.
And Arthur replies with, well, how about we come to you and you give us the tribute, because we're much better than you. So he goes off to conquer Rome. But in this one, I guess he's actually going after the Saxons at first.
Right.
But then they were talking about how at least it suggests that he just keeps on going and is just clearing heathens out of the wildlands.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, because his whole conquest was sort of spurned on by Mordred in the first place.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
Eva is saying, I didn't see the Arthur movie with Keira, but the soundtrack to it was amazing. Yes, really? It is. It's Hans Zimmer. And yeah, it's like Zimmering it.
All right, I'll have to check that out.
It's a really good soundtrack.
Thanks, Eva. I always like to hear about good soundtracks.
Yeah. So what else was there to talk about with Arthur?
Saxons. We were talking about Saxons.
Saxons.
What else were we talking about before we turned the cameras on? We were talking a little bit about Fall of Arthur, and it was mostly about the difference between the legends and Guinevere and Lancelot.
Yeah. I think we covered Guinevere, we covered Lancelot, we covered Mordred, we covered the Saxons. There wasn't much more to it, really. Like, I mean, I didn't read too much of the analysis because I didn't have time, unfortunately. But I wanted to make sure that I at least read the poem so that I could talk about that.
They got all the way up to the point where Mordred has just received word that his men were not able to get Guinevere back, and they wanted to stop trying because they were afraid Lancelot was going to show up and destroy them if they chased her all the way to her father's castle.
Right.
So, and they're watching over the sea, and Arthur and Gawain have just arrived on their ships.
Right. And you're right, like, Guinevere gets, like, a lot of crap in this. Like,
she does.
Like, she gets...
I mean, again, it's not... They call her the Fey Woman constantly.
Yeah.
And they do... He does outright lay the breaking of the Round Table at her feet.
Right.
And pretty much say, once she was gone from the court and Lancelot was unhappy, she could no longer be happy with him because she wasn't, the queen anymore, and he wasn't lavishing attention on her the way he used to.
So it makes her seem shallow.
It makes her seem very shallow.
And so then she goes back and has this very awkward reconciliation with Arthur. Mm-hmm. Mordred comes in and gives her the choice of either marrying him or becoming his love slave.
Yeah, basically he says, you will lay beside me either as wife or as slave. Make your choice, which... I'll give her this. She doesn't stay with him.
Right.
And some of the other legends have him either marrying her and fathering a child on her.
Right.
Or at least being about to marry her when Arthur comes back to stop him.
Right.
So
having her escape is like, okay, maybe she will like come into her own at this point, but it's like she goes through like this horrible excursion through the forest and then gets back to her home and it's abandoned.
Yeah, which I think she's basically sent getting away and hoping that Lancelot will come and save her. And it kind of sounds like she didn't treat him very well when they parted, so...
No, and I mean, Lancelot barely mentions Guinevere at all. He just really wants to reconcile with Arthur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because his real unhappy... I mean,
most Tolkien's got a problem with women.
A little bit, I think. He also, and even Christopher Tolkien pointed out, he spells Guinevere about 8 different ways throughout the course of the poem.
I noticed that too.
Which is kind of funny. But yeah, it was interesting. It does kind of, it's not horrible to her, but it's definitely harsher than some of the other versions, and it does make her out to be a bit on the shallow and a bit on the always waiting for someone to save her, and she makes these messes and then waits for someone to come clean them up.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Temple is saying, I'm looking at this really cool timeline of world history, and it shows that Arthur's reign came after the Romans left Britain and the Picts and Scots were invading from the north. And that's true. That's kind of where a lot of the Arthur tales sort of take place. But then, of course, like with Mallory, it sort of gets co-opted by the more... the more Charlemagne era Age of Chivalry type of mythos, and so we see a lot more of that enter into the Arthur legend. And Jan
no female characters really in the Hobbit book, which
is why I fall firmly on the I like Tauriel side of the argument.
Yeah, I do too.
And in There and Back Again, we might see Galadriel like actually in battle.
Oh, that would be cool.
Right?
That would be cool. I would enjoy that. Yeah, with Tauriel, I think I would have liked to see them keep that character in there, but let her relationship with Keely be a friendship.
Yeah.
Rather than a romance thing, because in a way I kind of felt like, the introduction of that relationship almost in a way kind of marginalizes Legolas and Gimli. And I'm not a Legolas-Gimli relationship person at all. Mm-hmm. I love their friendship, and part of what makes it so important in the original trilogy, original trilogy, I'm still in Star Wars mode, I guess. There is no other trilogy of Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is because it is so monumental that an elf and a dwarf were able to cross the boundaries.
Right.
And Tauriel and Keely...
Like, I thought, I agree. Their relationship...
Maybe found common ground a little too easily.
Yeah, like, their relationship, I felt, would have been much nicer if it was just a friendship.
A friendship and a curiosity about each other.
Because I thought, like, they did a great job of establishing Tauriel as this character
Temple's with me. Temple's with me on this.
Jan is saying, Josh, have you heard that There and Back Again could be the shortest movie? That I haven't heard that, but I'm not surprised.
There's definitely been a lot of padding in this trilogy. Like, much as I love Peter Jackson, much as I love The Hobbit, these movies, An Unexpected Journey in particular, felt very padded. To me, anyway. But about Tauriel, like, I sort of would have liked to have seen, like, because she's established as an elf who doesn't really subscribe to the isolationist attitude of Thranduil. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would have been cool if, like, her curiosity had led to more of just, like, a nice friendship with Keely and more sympathy with him and the dwarves.
Yeah. One thing, I don't know if a lot of you have seen the extended edition of Unexpected Journey, but there's a missing scene in there that I thought was interesting, and it was right after the dwarves arrived at the Elven Court, and it's during the part where they're eating and Gandalf and Thorin are speaking with Elrond. But in the meantime, there's a little bit in there where Keely makes notice of an attractive female elf.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the other
yeah.
dwarves are kind of like, what are you talking about?
That's not a woman, dude.
So I think the one he was looking at was a woman.
No. The big joke was he was like.
No, I thought one of the others pointed out one of the men, but I thought.
No,
Keely was looking at was the harpist, and it was a woman, I think.
No, that was somebody else. Keely was the one who was like, oh, he's like, oh, I don't care for elven women, and then he sort of like eyes this one walking by, and everybody notices, and they just say, Keely, that's not a woman.
That's not exactly how I remember it, but I guess I'd have to go back and see. I know there was a joke about one of the men, but I thought Keely was actually looking at the harpist or one of the others who was a woman.
No, I think it was somebody else who was looking at the
harpist. Either way, his little deviance was introduced earlier in the movies than I realized. But it was interesting that they had established that early on, instead of having him just suddenly fall for Toriel when elves and dwarves have hated each other for all this time. So,
okay.
He did look at a female elf.
He did look at a female, and then the other elf was a man. So...
Okay.
Oh, okay, now I'm remembering. Yeah, he's eyeing it. He's eyeing the harpist, and somebody like points out, and he just quickly goes like, "Oh no, I'm not into elf women." Like,
that would be weird.
I'm into dwarf chicks. What are you talking about, man? Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, you're a guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, there were definitely points where I was like, oh, like it sort of felt like a cheap gag to me. But
I don't know if I would go quite that far. I thought it was presented all right for what it was, but I would have rather seen it just kept as like a curiosity and a friendship than try to introduce the romance angle. Because just given the long animosity between the two races, it didn't really make sense that they would just have this weird love at first sight thing.
Yeah.
And with Toriel, it definitely bought his curiosity at first.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And interest. And I would have liked to kind of see it stay more with that than try to give this, like, and you are my one true love. Yes, Fellowship the Musical.
Yes!
So your men look like women.
So your women look like men.
It's true.
I have the soundtrack to that somewhere.
I saw it last year. I would love to see them do performances again, but I have the soundtrack, too.
Has anyone seen Austen Land? Brett McKenzie is in it. I still haven't seen Austen Land.
Yeah, I haven't even heard of it.
It's a movie. I think it's out on on demand. It might not be on Netflix yet. About a woman who goes to what is essentially a Jane Austen theme park.
Oh, that's cool.
But it's basically like a big Victorian mansion, and everybody sort of plays their roles, and they sort of reenact Pride and Prejudice. Mm-hmm. With like about 5 or 6 different Darcys that all the women eventually sort of pair up with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fun.
So it's a romantic
says
comedy.
Too much hate about Toriel, and I agree.
There definitely
I don't hate her at all. I think she's awesome.
No, I love Toriel,
and I don't even hate what's going on between her and Keely. I think it's very cool. I just wish it had been done a little bit differently.
I agree. The only line that
was
maybe a little cheesy
that was maybe a smidge cheesy.
Do you think she could have loved me?
But I'll give her reaction. I thought the two of them played that line really.
Yeah, no,
really
I thought her reaction was fantastic.
But that was a smidge
to that. But no, the Keely line that always makes me cringe is when he says, "Oh, who knows what might be stuffed down my pants." I was like, oh, something inside me just died.
Little bit.
I was like, oh, Peter Jackson, you made me think about that.
Yeah, why? Well, not just, you made me think about that, but also, like, really? A dwarf is, like, making sexual innuendos at an elf? Like, 2 seconds after they met? That's really deviant. Like, if you think about it, that's really deviant.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes Keely out to be a creep.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it is what it is, and, like, I mean, knowing what we know about what happens in the final movie, which I won't talk about just in case anybody here hasn't actually read the books, which, by the way, you should. It's an easy read. You should read it. But, it could lead to some interesting stuff in the third movie. Temple is saying, I like Tariel, I just don't like the love triangle. It makes me dislike Legolas when I don't want to.
I agree on those points. It didn't make me dislike Legolas. It would be very hard to make me dislike Legolas.
I kind of wish that like there had been more focus on Tariel trying to drag Legolas kicking and screaming into the outside world.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought like his own infatuation with Tariel was like a good like foot in the door to get us to that point.
Yeah, I agree about that. I do. I think Tariel's interest in Keely and the fact that he kind of lost his chance with her to this interest. I mean, I'm kind of expecting her to not survive the third movie.
I don't think she's gonna. No.
And not to spoil anything about what happens in the third movie.
Well, I mean,
she's an original character.
This is all speculation.
So it's all speculation.
She could decide, you know what, I'm going to go to the north and screw all y'all.
Yes, light. I appreciate that too. And I think it's very cool.
Say, but I do appreciate them bringing together two different races, so to speak. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm reading the Silmarillion, and I'm learning all about dwarf elvish backstories, etc.
Silmarillion, I will say, was one that I found much easier in audiobook. There was a really good audiobook version of that.
I really should listen to the audiobook of that, because
a joy to listen to. So I listened to it so long ago, I wish I could remember who the reader was, but I would definitely recommend hunting that one up on audio, because it was really good.
I'm sure it can probably be found on Audible.
So especially if you're trying to read it and you're having trouble getting through the print version, which it can be very dry. It's very historical.
It was tough for me. Like I still haven't gotten all the way through the print version. Yeah, I would
definitely recommend hunting up the audio. But one of my friends, just about Legolas, just made me think. One of my friends just thought it was hilarious because Orlando Bloom is a little bulked up since the original trilogy.
A little bit.
And it didn't really bother me while I was watching, but it definitely bothered her, and she kept making jokes about like Hulk Legolas. And eventually we decided that what happened was after he lost Tauriel, he was so grieved that he
emaciated
stopped eating
himself,
and became skinny and emaciated.
There you go. Like we are dealing with 60 years of chronic depression from Legolas.
Yes.
Jan is saying if there is more Shire music
wasted away after losing her.
If there's more music in There and Back Again, best movie ever. I love Shire music, so I'm not going to disagree with you there.
Underlining a lot in the Sill. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very good point. And so it seems like we have a couple people over in the Torn chat. I feel like we're neglecting you over there, Strongbor and Axerouse. Yes. Hello.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Hulk Legolas. Nice.
The shoulder aspect of the costume does add. Although I feel like if they had given him the costume in the original movies was a very like fitted thin tunic.
Yeah, and
which might have actually made him look even bulkier if they had to make one that fitted his current physique.
In Two Towers,
he's not a bulky guy now, but compared to how slender he was in the original trilogy.
But I mean, we sort of had that in the Two Towers when he puts on armor for the Battle of Helm's Deep. Yeah, and he looks very bulky there as well. But it's a different kind of bulky. But I mean, it's still like in the shoulder area. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like we haven't seen it before.
Yeah, and it is funny because I don't think Orlando Bloom is ever going to be a bulky guy, but when
he's
you
really
put him
not,
up next to his original trilogy self, he's matured and he's gotten a little broader. He's not as svelte as he once was.
Yes. So we're going on an hour and 20 here. We've only talked a little bit about.
Jan's gonna go hang out in the other chat as well.
Yay!
They need some more company over there.
So One Ring had a Twitter feed one day on Marvel and Hobbit LOTR characters blending. That would have been interesting.
Huh.
Now I'm trying to picture that. Like, I mean, well, of course, like Ian McKellen, Gandalf, and Magneto.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody saw the Five-ish Doctors reboot.
Oh, I did. That was amazing.
I know you did. But one of the best moments in it was when Sylvester McCoy had gone missing from the Hobbit set, and they actually went to Peter Jackson and Ian McKellen on the set of The Hobbit.
Yeah.
With Peter Jackson asking Ian McKellen if he could maybe do that scene with Radagast without Sylvester McCoy, and he was basically like, "Oh yeah, it'll be better."
You know, I think it'll actually be better.
Sylvester who? Who's that?
But actually, like, my favorite line in that whole thing was from Sylvester McCoy when he's like the entire time he's wearing a Hobbit T-shirt.
Yeah,
he's just like selling
the
Hobbit.
Oscar award-winning movie.
The Oscar
award-winning Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm. And then like at one point like he leaves with Peter Davison and Colin Baker to invade the set of the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who.
And he says at some point, he's like, "Of course, I'm going to abandon the Hobbit. This isn't some flash in the pan, multi-million-dollar Hollywood feature. This is important.
This is important." Yes.
And that line absolutely killed me.
Yeah, and he spends his entire time with the other two just finding excuses to drop in the fact that he's working on the Hobbit franchise.
Yes.
And it's very entertaining.
So, yeah, I think it's about time for us to start wrapping this up. We talked a lot. So, Temple is saying,
if you look online, I think you'll be able to find it on there.
Yeah, I think
the Five-ish Doctors. It's called the Five-ish Doctors Reboot.
It should be available online on the BBC, I think.
I think so. If it's not, I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was just something they put out accompanying the 50th anniversary because they brought in some of the old Doctors and Companions, but not as many as I think people wanted to see. They just couldn't find a way to work them in that wouldn't be gimmicky, I don't think.
Probably.
So,
although I give them all the credit in the world for finding a way to bring back Paul McGann.
Yes. Oh, that was brilliant. But,
oh, God. I cheered when I saw that.
But Peter Davison coordinated this Five-ish Doctors reboot film where he got... not only he got Sylvester McCoy and Colin Baker to feature in it with him, basically the three of them being like, what, they're not going to use us? Like, they were trying to get in and they weren't asked... And so they decided to go break in to the set.
Right.
And find a way to be in it. And then they just brought in so many other people who were involved in Doctor Who.
John Barrowman showed up.
Oh, so many people.
Oh, my God. And the stuff with John Barrowman.
He was so funny.
Oh, my God.
So funny.
Because the big thing with John Barrowman is that he is a very out gay man.
Yes.
And so they have him talking about, like, he's got this dark, dirty secret, and the dirty secret is he's actually married with two kids. He has a
wife and two kids in a minivan. It was very, very funny. But yeah, and they make a lot of references to... They get onto the set because basically Peter Davison is David Tennant's father-in-law.
Yeah.
Because David Tennant married his daughter.
So David Tennant sort of like sneaks him in.
Gets coerced into helping them sneak in, and the whole thing is just very, very funny.
And he's on the phone with Georgia Moffat, who is Peter Davison's daughter and David Tennant's wife. And she's in the hospital giving birth to their child. And so she's on the phone with him
she's in labor.
In labor. She's like, you have to let him onto the set.
He says if you do this is the last thing. He says this is it. Then he'll leave us alone.
And so David Tennant's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Hangs up the phone. I feel like I forgot something.
Oh, we can keep the discussion going.
Oh, we absolutely can keep the discussion going.
You have at least one on there that's over 2 hours long.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was back when we were...
Josh, what do you think of The Dark Knight Rises?
Oh, we've had this talk.
People want to know. The world wants to know.
Jan just wants to know.
Jan wants everybody else to know.
We talked about this. I was not a fan.
No.
No, I was not a fan. I didn't dislike it as much as some other people do, but it was definitely a lackluster finale to what I thought was an amazing Batman series.
Well,
at least in my opinion.
I won't argue with that. There were aspects of it I liked, but overall I didn't think it was the strongest.
I didn't like that it pretty much like restarted its own plot halfway through.
Huh. Yeah. I know what you mean.
So yeah, that's what I think of The Dark Knight Rises.
Okay.
So yeah, as you can tell, we're big Doctor Who fans. She cosplays a Gallifrey every year.
Only the last 2 years.
But
I hope to continue.
They're really good cosplays.
Aw, thanks. I've been cosplaying at anime cons for several years, but just started with the Doctor Who stuff. So.
Eva was saying, I feel bummed that I missed the chat today. I know, and I'm bummed you missed it too, but it will all go on YouTube and you'll be able to see it all. And yes, I do have, you were saying I have a couple 2-hour episodes on here. And those were my reviews of The Desolation of Smaug.
Yes.
I think the entire runtime of the review of The Desolation of Smaug is
longer than the movie itself.
Longer than the movie itself, yes. Josh, will you be at WonderCon in Anaheim? I'm definitely going to try to be there.
I'll be there. Got my pro pass. I'm ready to go.
I can't get pro passes.
Aw.
Because even though I work on tons of great titles that are huge fan favorites, I'm not credited on any of them. So, as far as Comic-Con is concerned, I'm not a professional.
I feel like you should be able to get in anyway. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I sent them, I wasn't credited on, but I just sent them screenshots, and you can't do screenshots, can you?
The best I can do...
There's got to be some sort of, like, payroll vouchers or something.
The best I can do is on the TNG Blu-rays. If you put it in your computer and look at a very specific file on the disc, you will see my name.
Jan, for Doctor Who, I would suggest you start at the beginning of the new series with the ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston. I started there. I was not that familiar with Doctor Who before it was restarted, which makes me feel kind of like a fraud when I'm at Gallifrey because there are so many people who grew up on the old series.
There are a lot of classic Doctor Who fans at Gallifrey.
Yeah, I started watching the classic series and I love it. I love it. But since I didn't start until the new series, but I would definitely recommend starting with that because it's an easier. For those of us who are used to TV the way it is now, the older stuff, the classic stuff, it's kind of like watching original series Star Trek. The effects are really bad. Some of the scripts are just, they drag on forever.
You really have to suspend your disbelief with a lot of it.
They're so much fun, and the performances are so much fun that if you're the sort of person who can get past that stuff and enjoy it for what it is, you will love the classic series. It's just, I would definitely recommend starting with the new stuff.
Well, I mean, the one episode I always use is like sort of the gateway episode into Doctor Who to see if you're into it. Basically, I always say watch the episode Blink. If you don't like that episode, odds are you're probably not going to like Doctor Who.
Yeah,
and that's a David Tennant episode.
But he's not in it very much.
No, he's not. But it really establishes a lot of the principles of Doctor Who and the wibbly wobbly timey wiminess of it all, very strongly. And I think it does a great job of it's got monsters that are scary as hell, even though when they return later they're not nearly as scary as they were in that one episode. At least I didn't think so.
No, I agree. They were never as good as they were in that first episode.
It's got a great use of time travel. It's got a fantastic character who is just in that one episode.
Who is played by Carey Mulligan, who some of you may know. She's had a pretty decent film career since then.
She's done okay since then. Yeah, she was nominated for an Oscar for, what was it, An Education, I think.
That was a good movie. It was disturbing, but good.
She was just in The Great Gatsby.
So, I first saw her in Blink, but if you haven't seen Blink yet, you may already know her from certain films.
Yeah.
Another one that's really good is Midnight. People were just talking about that one recently.
You know what?
And that's a very creepy, contained episode, which is another good one. But, I tend to just tell people start at the beginning of 9.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good one. It absolutely is a good one. And because that's where I started, and I got hooked almost right away. So yeah, I don't want...
Blink is a good standalone episode, and that's why it's good.
Blink is a good standalone. Midnight is a good standalone. Another good standalone that I always recommend is Vincent and the Doctor.
Yeah, Vincent and the Doctor is really good. Vincent and the Doctor, it's a little more tied into continuity. Not the main plot, but there's stuff going on that may be confusing if you don't know what's happened up to then.
A little bit, but it's also not the focus of that episode.
It's not. It's a focus, though. I'm not saying you won't enjoy Vincent and the Doctor because it's a fantastic episode. I'm just saying there are some things that are pretty prominent in that episode that might be confusing.
Maybe a little bit.
But I would still recommend it. It's good.
And Jan is saying you should watch Sherlock as well. Already do.
Yes, you should. If you don't, you should.
If you don't watch Sherlock, you should watch Sherlock. I believe all of it is on Netflix now.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's very quick, and it's Benedict Cumberbatch at his finest.
And Martin Freeman.
Being
awesome.
Such a good show. Yeah. Love that show. And
me too.
I got so excited when season 3 came, and it ended just as fast as it began.
I know. It's over so fast. And it's going to be another 2 years before we get any more.
I know.
But it's quick to catch up on because there's only 9 episodes so far. They're all an hour and a half long, but there's only 9 episodes.
Yeah. So, it's... Okay,
Vincent and the Doctor, yes.
Very sweet story.
Makes me cry too.
Yep.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
There are only... I think this and Journey's End are the only 2 Doctor Who episodes that consistently make me cry. Because I don't know about anybody else, but Donna is my favorite companion.
I'm not going to argue. I love Donna.
I love Donna so much.
I'm a big Martha fan too, and I know not a lot of people are conflicted on Martha, but I think she's pretty
Martha.
Awesome.
I
think Donna's my favorite.
Donna is far and away my favorite. I think I appreciated Martha more after she left the Doctor and joined Torchwood. she sort of came into her own a little bit more.
Yeah, I wish she'd been more integrated into Torchwood.
Yeah.
I've seen some, actually, I'm a fanfic reader, and I've seen some very good fanfics where Martha and Mickey Smith actually joined up with Torchwood and did more work with them.
Yeah, because, like, we only see them in a couple scenes in the show.
Yeah, but it's cool that they went that way and that Martha was with Unit and...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Light of the King is asking, do you know when the next Star Wars starts filming?
In a few months, says Jan. I don't actually know.
Yeah,
I think it's got to be soon.
It's got to be soon. I mean, like, I'm worried about it with all the script issues they had. Mm-hmm. Like, they had Michael Arndt, who did Toy Story. Mm. He was the head writer on it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then basically J.J. Abrams fired him and brought on Lawrence Kasdan instead. Which I love Lawrence Kasdan, but I sort of felt like that was a little fan service since Kasdan wrote Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, right,
or co-wrote it.
Right, I did hear about that. I didn't remember the name, but I did hear about that.
And the other thing that scares me is basically the direction Michael Arndt wanted to take it was to have the story focus on Han and Leia's children as like young up-and-coming Jedi, which is like that's the obvious way to take it.
Yes.
And sort of do like a nice passing of the torch with Luke, Han, and Leia to these new characters.
Jason and Jaina and Anakin.
Well, they will probably be named something else since they were saying we're not doing extended universe.
Ah, they should though.
They should. They really should.
The extended universe is so rich. Mm-hmm. And those characters are so great.
But, I mean, what scared me was, like, the reason Arndt left was because J.J. Abrams wanted to do, in Episode 7, that focused primarily on Han, Luke, and Leia. Which, as much as I love Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill, their time for doing Star Wars as a full movie has kind of long since passed. Like, I would much rather them have like a very nice passing of the torch to new characters rather than an entire movie that's about them that is then the lead up to Episode 8, which is the passing of the torch.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like we can do this in one movie. We don't need to spread this out over 2 or 3.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with Chris Hardwick, the guy from The Nerdist. If you don't know who Chris Hardwick is, you should. He's awesome. But he's made kind of a campaign out of saying, you know, try not to judge things before you see them. Right. Which we do online all the time.
We do,
Being
absolutely,
online makes it very easy to be like, well, that's going to suck. They cast that guy, he's going to be terrible. And that's not always true.
Right.
And I'm hopeful that whatever they decide to do with Star Wars 7, that it's going to be really good. That they'll do it well and respectfully. And give us a good movie. But there are certain things about that that make me nervous because I do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not going into the it's going to suck camp, but I'm definitely nervous.
Yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic just because I know that J.J. Abrams is a much bigger Star Wars fan than he was a Star Trek fan, and it showed in his Star Trek movies.
I like his Star Trek movies. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with them, but I love those movies.
I thought the first one was okay, and the Into Darkness is one of the few movies that actually made me angry.
See, that's how I feel about Harry Potter 3.
Oh, okay.
Not about Into Darkness.
Okay.
I do think Into Darkness would have been better if they had just left Khan alone and tried to do... Basically, they could have told almost the exact same story, but just made the villain original.
Yeah, exactly.
But I liked it. I thought it was good all the same.
Okay.
I thought it was good.
But yeah, like I sort of feel like I don't know. I always have like this sort of love-hate relationship with J.J. Abrams. Like, I thought Alias was fantastic. I thought Lost was good up until like season 3, and then kind of fell apart for me.
Yeah. I loved Lost. Now, there were no parts of it that I had complaints about, but overall I loved it. But I think part of why I felt fonder of it than a lot of people did, especially the later seasons, is because I didn't start watching it until they were in season 7. So I just sat down with the DVDs and just bowled through them.
Okay.
And with a lot of the mythology, I think that was probably an easier way to take it than having to wait week to week and month to month and wait over the hiatuses to have stuff resolved and have stuff come back.
That's
So
certainly
I think that
possible.
probably contributed to my enjoyment of it compared to some people's.
That's certainly possible. I've never marathoned it, but like I've definitely noticed like
Jan's gonna fight me on Harry Potter 3
yeah.
too. Sorry.
That's
Love
okay.
the book.
He was fighting me on
Didn't like the movie.
Dark Knight Rises, so I'm used to it. I think marathoning it would probably make it flow a lot more smoothly because that's something I also found out happens a great deal with Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. Like, because I just got season 3, and I marathoned that in 2 days, and like while I was watching it week to week, first of all, Game of Thrones week to week, shortest hour on TV. Like it,
Yes.
it flies by in what feels like 20 minutes.
Yeah, and then you can't believe it when you look back and think about how much stuff they packed in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't usually feel all that rushed, but then you're just, was that all that was all in the same episode?
I know, like, I was rewatching it, and I'm like, wait a minute, all this happened in one episode? And then, like, marathoning the whole thing, like, I actually, like, had a much stronger emotional connection to it. Marathoning the whole thing, like, the Red Wedding, like, I mean, okay, it got me when I...
Spoilers?
I'm not going to say what happened, but
Okay.
like it got me when I read it in the book, for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the anticipation of it with the show sort of diminished the impact for me when I watched it.
Yeah.
And then like the ending with Daenerys and her being embraced by the people of Yunkai. Mm-hmm. I thought like, well, that was a good ending. It was a solid ending. I don't know, I don't know how deeply it would affect me, but then like I marathoned it, and like I was holding my breath during the Red Wedding, and then when the people of Yunkai lift Daenerys up on their shoulders, like I found myself in tears. I was like, oh my god, this like really got to me this time.
That was a gorgeous image that they created with that. And I mean, I've definitely heard a lot of people complain about that, of like the white savior saves all the dark people, and it's problematic. It's a common problem with fantasy series, because you have this like, this is a race that, you know, lives in the desert, so they kind of naturally end up looking like this.
Right.
And you know, I don't want to open that bee's nest, but I'm just saying that final image, just the color contrast with her in the blue dress and the white hair and then all the people in brown, and then the color contrast, the visual was stunning.
Right.
It was just visually stunning. That's,
right.
So.
Yeah, it was definitely like.
All right, if you do a show about every Harry Potter movie, I want to come back.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
hang out for that one.
Yeah, Jan has been suggesting I do a Harry Potter episode for a long time, and I do want to do just a straight up Harry Potter episode, and I will at some point. But of course, March is sci-fi, so it doesn't really kind of work there. But I Stole the One Ring is saying we marathon all the Game of Thrones seasons in 2 days. That's awesome. And actually, I'm doing my own weekend marathon of season 3 for the season 4 premiere. And I think I invited you to that.
Yes, you did.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to try to make it.
Okay, because I'm thinking about webcasting this one.
Oh, really?
Webcasting an entire season 3 marathon of Game of Thrones.
Oh, that should be interesting.
With all of us just sitting there and commenting on it the whole time. Because we will.
We will. We will.
We're not quiet people when it comes to this. So now we're at about 1:45. We should probably try to wrap this up. Yeah. So I want to say thank you to Eve for coming.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed yourself, and thank you for reading Jill's wonderful story.
Oh, again, thank you, Jill, for writing it. If you're still with us, I loved it. I loved it, and I was very excited to get to read it. It was awesome. It
was fantastic, and I want to thank everybody in the chat for coming by and joining in. We had I Stole the One Ring, Jan, Eva, Light of the King.
A couple of Ustream generic names.
Yeah, a couple generic Ustreamers.
Temple.
Temple, of course, yes. Who else was there? I think that was
and
just...
Strongbow and Axerouse over in the other chat.
Over in the other chat, and yes. And so, yeah. So thank you all for coming to this. I'm sorry with the time change. A lot of people came in late. So I'll make sure to get the archive of this up on YouTube so you can see what you missed.
Yes, we'll wrap this up and everyone can go take a nap to make up for that hour.
Yes, exactly. And so, like...
Oh, I have a question, actually,
Yes.
before we wrap up. You said you're going to be doing shows once
Right,
a week?
right. I was just about to get to that. Because we had a 3-week break between this episode and the last episode, to make up for that, I'm going to do a show every week for the rest of March. And then we'll get back into the 2-week scenario. And also it's sci-fi, so it's something I can talk about forever.
And how's that going to work with the book of the month? Is there a certain, like, by next week we'll talk about this much, or...?
No, we'll save the book of the month for the end of the month.
Okay, so what will be talked about the other...
Well, let's see. I want to talk about the influences of sci-fi, the influences of sci-fi writers, some of the best ones. Like, I've been reading a lot of Isaac Asimov lately, and seeing, like, his influence on sci-fi, like, it's almost as pervasive as Tolkien on fantasy.
Absolutely.
Like, in ways, like, I think most people don't even realize. And various other things, like I'd love to talk about Star Trek, since it's kind of in my wheelhouse. It's kind of how I make my living. And I've got a couple friends who are big sci-fi geeks, so I want to try to bring them on. So we'll be back next week, which is the 16th.
Josh is planning a big tribute show for Dark Knight Rises.
Yes, I am. Oh, yeah. It's called Watching Batman Begins in the Dark Knight. Okay, Light of the King is... the 16th is Purim, so I might be a little late as I have lunch with friends. That's all right. That's right. It is Purim. Okay. That's about all I have to say about that.
Right.
I'm a terrible Jew.
So am I. It's okay.
Temple is saying, I just watched Shatner's documentary, The Captains, which was awesome. It was kind of a fascinating documentary.
I haven't seen that yet.
It's basically Shatner. It's like the biggest ego stroke Shatner has ever done, where it's basically him sitting down with everybody who has ever played a starship captain on Star Trek and just interviewing them. So, like, he interviews Patrick Stewart, Kate Mulgrew, Avery Brooks, Scott Bakula, and even Chris Pine. And he actually arm wrestles Chris Pine at one point, which was really, like, surreal to watch.
What will you dress up as for Purim?
I have no idea. I normally don't dress up for Purim because I'm a terrible Jew. I don't even go to services. Although, like, there are some... I am part of a group that does a big festival, so I might try to go to that, but we'll see.
You should probably dress up as Jesus. I think that would be appropriate, right? That would not get you totally lynched. But...
Yeah. Well, you see, we don't lynch. We just sort of...
Yeah, I suppose
we
outcasted?
No, we give you a disappointed glare.
Ah, right.
That's what we're good at. So, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. Oh, the Captain's documentary.
Right.
Like, the craziest part in it is his interview with Avery Brooks. Because I swear to God, the two of them were doing something right before the camera started rolling. Because their entire conversation made absolutely no sense.
Okay.
None whatsoever. It was like watching just like two stoned old men ramble at each other. And it was bizarre and fascinating at the same time.
Okay.
Because Avery Brooks now is apparently a music professor at Princeton.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So
cool.
I'll
check that out.
So next week, the 16th, we will be talking sci-fi. I'm going to try to bring another one of my friends on to discuss more sci-fi stuff. And to recap, Rewrite Tolkien, we're going to be doing Douglas Adams this month. So get your best Hitchhiker's Guide entries to Middle-earth into our mailboxes. And our book of the month for March is Orphans of the Sky by Robert Heinlein. It's a very quick read, since we do have a shorter month. and it's one that's been recommended to me a lot, so I'm foisting it on all of you. So Temple says you need to watch the supplementary close-up on the captains. Avery Brooks is even crazier in that one. Wow. Okay, I might have to check that out. So thank you again, Eve, for coming.
Thank you for having me, and thank you guys for hanging out.
Thanks for hanging out with all of us and our crazy ramblings for going on 2 hours now. And I will see you all next week. Take care and never stop reading.